It's time for messages. I don't know.
Mind-sucking aliens. Have you ever felt like this is right?
Have you ever had an TPG just come arrest you with a predator?
There's something in this started
Introducing the Psychic Guys.
Guys is gender neutral, guys.
Where real practitioners grab the woo-woo by its cute little devil horns and squeeze out a sense-making smoothie of scintillating sagacity. Coming to you from the frontiers of the mysterious, we don't just talk about it, we do it. And then we talk about it. Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Psychic Guys. My name's David, and I'm joined tonight by my beautiful co-hosts, Josh, Daz, and Brett.
How's it going? Hi guys from UK.
So we're all experienced remote viewers, so we're using psychic skills to look at stuff like financial predictions and medical problems, missing persons, technology, business development, and all that stuff. But we know from experience that what most people want to hear about is the weird stuff and the mysteries and the woo-woo. And we've all had our own strange experiences. And on this podcast, we're going to explore that stuff and try and make some sense of it. But this is going to be off the cuff. It's going to be unscripted. It's going to be raw, earthy, authentic, real talk, as you'll see in a moment when Josh stops for groceries. And in the spirit of that, I'm going to drop this on you guys. I have a psychic challenge for you. What photo am I looking at now? I'm looking at it really hard.
Well, knowing you,
You're
it's
looking at Podcastle and all four of our faces.
No, it's not feet. No, it's a proper... Daz is the closest so far, but not very close. It's a proper remote viewing target, this.
Oh, you dropped a random on me. I wasn't prepared.
Oh man.
I don't know. What I'd have to do a session.
Oh, come on.
You're just guessing now.
Yeah.
Come on, Josh, help him out.
It's an outline of like a shoe. It's like the whole point is that it's an oblong shape that's bigger up top. Like I don't want to say like a light bulb, but that general sort of outline. It's not the literal shape of it, but that's the
like top
gist
heavy
of the thing.
So top heavy.
It also feels
gray.
empty in the center, kind of like if it were a bowl or a vase. Y'all have never seen me do this.
Come on, Daz has learned cowboy remote viewing in London. He's a pro at it now.
I've done it once.
This is why we haven't won the lottery
Daz, it's
yet.
your turn.
Do you know what? I haven't done any spontaneous RV like this in years.
Is this really unfair of me to put you on the spot?
Are we
flashing
seriously
back.
meant to be
It's
doing
like
it?
memories.
I haven't tried. Yeah. Okay.
It's just a training target, but whoever gets closest gets a prize. There's a real prize.
That road quality is okay.
Okay.
We got skin in the game here.
Pointed, a very tall pointed object or structure.
Brett, what do you got?
I think there's a little bit of delay for some reason. I don't know. So just like spontaneous, random, off the cuff. Again, this is not remote viewing. This is not what I normally do. So this is kind of more akin to guessing. But I don't know. I just see a large flat surface with a tall object, a lot of verticals. Something that reminds me of like a waterfall in as far as its verticality, but flat surfaces. That's it.
All right, you ready for your feedback?
I don't know.
I'm going to share my screen.
Wasn't
now.
ready to do this.
So,
oh well, not a waterfall, but
no,
indeed.
I mean, if you combine Daz's data of grey alien, and... I mean, this elephant is packing.
I'm really terrible at animal RV.
I could get the whole.
Yeah, I never get them.
If
the
I
whole
were to
face shape there, but
pen and paper, it's funny when I do an RV session, like a real RV session with pen and paper. Oftentimes with animals, what happens is I'll actually go right up to their face and I'll get their eyes and like the details right around their eyes first. For some reason, that's just what I home in on.
Yeah, I tend to see the eyes first on people as well.
That makes sense.
And like build out from there. So who do you think got closest?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, it was just like a spontaneous type of thing.
Yeah, nobody
really
did
prepared
well.
Wasn't really prepared to do this day.
Well, I know. I'm sorry if that was like totally unreasonable of me, but spontaneity, right?
Hi guys, we're all a bunch of professional psychics here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
That's all
it's
right. We
just
can
it's
cut
just
this
not
bit
what
out.
we.
Fix
It's
it in
not what I
post.
usually. It's not.
Yeah.
That's not what I usually do, David.
Yeah, but we'd be the first to admit as well that
Uh,
and it's a good note for that
This isn't our.
remote viewing and remote
Yeah.
viewing isn't 100% accurate either. We all do miss the target.
Yeah. Well, remote viewing is usually done with a pen and paper over many minutes, if not hours, for a session. We don't sit there going, it's this. But I just thought we'd see what dates we could get.
Yeah, this is not-
Daz got the color right.
Yeah, this isn't what we normally do.
And Josh got the some of
Yeah,
the
the shape right.
dimensionals
Yeah,
there.
definitely. You got that. Yeah.
I think you all got. Whoa. All right, so Josh, I think you won the prize.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So the prize is you get to go first at giving us like a brief origin story, a bio, how you got started, how you found yourself with this weird bunch of people doing this strange thing that we all do.
Well, when I was a child, I'm kidding. We said we wouldn't do that. I grew up in a very mystical sort of fundamentalist Christian worldview. Then later in life, some things happened where my opinions, my strongly held beliefs were brought into question. And as a result of that, I was like, well, I need to rebuild this understanding. I'm going to check out some things that I've heard about CIA psychic research, because why the heck not? Let's see if that's a thing, if all of my other understandings aren't the way I thought they were. And that's about the quickest way I could say I got involved here.
And how long ago was that?
I was in about early 2021, late 2020.
Cool. So now you're doing missing persons and boomerangs and all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah, I don't really go out of my way to do missing persons targets. I have done several and I have contacts that will send me those, but I'm not just jumping up to do them. They come to me and I usually don't take them unless it's a situation where I am the literal last line. They've tried everything else, because I don't want to interfere with any active investigations that cause someone to be in more trouble than they might be,
Sure. And like, how traumatized do you want to get?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I think for all of us, the answer
Hopefully
is
very
usually
little.
like very. As well, we've all been messed up by targets we've done over the years. I think. Who wants to go next? Daz, I think you got the most data. You got the
I
color
got
right.
color, yeah. Woohoo, color. Okay, well, I trained in classical psychic stuff from the age of 15. I mean, unofficially before that, but officially from 15. And then around about 1992 at a UFO conference in Leeds, I heard a taped, an illegal taped recording of a person claiming to work for a government agency that remote viewed UFOs and tracked them back to their origin. And after hearing that, I was like, wow, I need to learn this. But that was pre-internet, 1992. So it literally took me another 3 or 4 years to track down who that was and the people involved, and then get involved with finding out about remote viewing online. And I've been pretty much hooked ever since. That's the short one.
Yeah, I think you predate all of us. You've been doing this probably the longest out of everyone. So
I'm luckier than the most, because it was normal in my house growing up in a spiritualist household, and my mother being the head of the spiritualist church at the time. The library of books in my house, we had a few, encyclopedias and things like that, but essentially 99% of the library books in my house was auras, crystals, how to develop your psychic skills, all that kind of stuff. So it was abnormal if you didn't read those kind of books in my household when I grew up. So I had a bit of a head start on most.
for sure. Well, I guess I'll just a real brief. I mean, I've been doing this, I guess, for like 13 years now. I started in 2010. I think it's funny. This is not my direction in life to begin with, because I was doing game design and character animation for game studios back in 2010. I just graduated from an animation school, and then I just saw a massive UFO fly over my head in the middle of the night, and all of my beliefs about reality kind of got turned upside down. I was like, wow, crap, what don't I know that I don't know? I should go find out. And I used to listen to Art Bell when I was a kid, and I loved listening to his talks about aliens and Bigfoot and cryptids and time travel and all that kind of stuff. And so remote viewing was that one thing that came back. I was like, I wonder if that remote viewing thing is real. And the rest is kind of history. I bought a course, went to a whole bunch of different seminars, and then started doing it myself. And then just one thing led to another, where now that's what I do full time now. So I kind of explore the matrix, if you will, a bit on my own. I do a bit of teaching, and I also do contract work as well in like financial sectors. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. And yeah, constantly trying to still learn though. Like that's for me, it's like there's a lot of people that are still they're using different techniques, different methods, and I try and be a sponge for everything. So I started with one particular technique. I've tried to learn a whole bunch of others, and there's even more stuff that I still want to learn. So I feel like that's really aided me in my journey of being a remote viewer and one of the psychic guys, I guess.
How many years you been doing it, Brett? Like 10? More? No, it's more.
I think it's
now,
like
is it?
13 now, because I started in 2010, and so yeah, wow, actually,
Oh, yeah.
almost 14 now. Holy, time flies.
Wow.
Yeah. So
It does go fast. So I'm the old guy then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's depressing.
all the wisdom you must bestow upon us your wisdom, Daz.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
remote viewing wisdom. I mean, I'm sure you have some. That's actually, I'll bet you people would love. If you were to give someone who was just getting into this, or just learning this, what piece of advice would you give them? It's like, I want to learn how to do this. You've been doing this since the 90s, or at least since a kid, you've had kind of experience at this. Where would you point them to start? Because, I mean, remote viewing, again, you may have a different thing than me, but remote viewing is, not necessarily for everyone, but where would you point people to start?
I actually get asked that a lot. Two things. For practice, I would say people should start with simplistic meditation techniques, and then to set them on a path towards remote viewing itself, or even any psychic endeavor, actually, but primarily remote viewing. I would say read at least 10 books first. And it could be any 10 books about remote viewing, but read 10 books on remote viewing.
Yes, people don't read anymore. I'm pretty sure.
But they should.
I think I own
should.
10 books about remote viewing, but I don't think I've read a single one cover to cover. I dipped into them, but yeah.
I think people need to be informed on what they're letting
internet
themselves in for.
generation. Everything is online now.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's a difference. And not that there aren't good books out there.
That's true. Yeah, maybe.
And we've just lost Josh. I think he's gone into a cell phone reception black spot or something. He's been.
Maybe if they can't read 10 books, watch 10 really good videos. That might help. If they haven't got the time for the 10 books, but in my opinion, people need to be very careful what they let themselves in for, because not only does it change your worldview, but to be good at it takes a lot of time and practice, and possibly a small expense of money as well, and resources.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. You can learn a lot faster if you pay for mentorship or training course, but you can do this for free on your own. Like, I didn't spend a penny on anything for like 2 years. There's so much free stuff out there online. And when I did spend some money, I progressed a lot faster. But, if you don't want to spend any money, this isn't like something where, we'll give you all the secrets for only $5,000. It's like, no, you can go out there, you can find resources, you can get started for free pretty easily.
Well, you guys are lucky because, I think we have been, like all of us as a group and more, have been creating resources. I remember when I first started, and there was nothing. It took, in 92, there was nothing. It took it to be 95, 96 before the internet started, and I managed to find PJ, Paul Smith, Lynn Buchanan, and a load of others, all in a very small email-only kind of news list. And that there was no graphics or anything. It was just textual emails going back and forth each day on a 1440k modem that you had to, plug in and dial up.
You had to wind the handle manually.
So there was nothing.
Yeah, there's a lot of free resources.
There was no manuals, there was no videos, there was no audio. You couldn't even in those days, you couldn't even get a back copy of, a coast to coast radio show program because it just didn't exist. The only way you could get it is to get it mailed to you on an audio tape that you put in a tape player.
Dang. Yeah, that's definitely old school. It's funny. I listened to Coast. I had on a little AM just audio thing just in the middle of the night. Just like, oh, my parents aren't up. Let me turn it on and listen to it. It'd be Art Bell talking about some sort of abduction story.
Coast to Coast has a lot to answer for. Because even in the UK, you see, we didn't get any of that kind of stuff in the UK. But at the UFO conventions, I did manage to pick up illicit copies of Coast to Coast programs on audio tape.
Oh, wow. Pirate Coast to Coast.
Isn't it crazy to think about it? £5 a cassette.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to some of it now because I've heard people talking about it so fondly, and I know that was a lot of people's introduction to remote viewing. So I've gone in the archives and listened to a few of them, and there's some seriously nutty people on there, isn't there? I mean, there's a broad range of topics. I think would be a diplomatic way of putting it. Like, wow. I find it interesting that a lot of people have listened to that, and remote viewing is what's stuck with them. That's the little scene that's stuck in their mind, and they've gone, I wonder. 10, 20 years later, they show up going, I remember reading about this when I was a kid, or, hey, Josh is back. Excellent.
Ed Dames and Coast to Coast and UFOs have a lot to answer for in regards to starting a lot of us on our remote viewing journey.
Yep. Those are the people who kind of kicked it off, I think, into the larger public awareness. And now I think just the online community is, if I were to guess, would be where the large majority of viewers are these days, such as the remote viewing Discord, everyone's respective communities that they're a part of that are remote viewing related. And I'm excited to see it kind of continue into the next epoch of whatever that looks like. Whether that's just like larger online communities or new conferences. So yeah, I'm really eager to see I've been in this for a bit over a decade. What's the next decade going to look like? Hopefully bigger and better things are coming.
Yeah, we're really getting into the next generation here, aren't we? There's changes afoot.
For sure. Yeah.
I just wanted to say something there, which I'm not going to say on the air. Be very poorly timed.
Well, an interesting thing I'd want to know if I was listening to this would be, okay, you guys heard about remote viewing. You weren't necessarily doing this in a practiced way beforehand, or maybe you were, Daz, to some extent as a kid because it was just basically part of your upbringing. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What was the thing that really convinced you? Because, when I began remote viewing, it's like, oh, I do some steps. I focus my attention, maybe start with some meditation. There's a lot of different methods out there. But it's like, what's the thing that really convinced you that there's no possible way that this could just be you got close with a guess?
I think it'd be my first session, right? Because I thought remote viewing was surely made up. On YouTube, you can find a video called Russell Targ's Banned TED Talk, which totally wasn't banned. There's a clickbait title. He really did do a TED Talk.
It wasn't banned. It's great clickbait.
No, it wasn't. But the title of the video is that, if you want to go and find it. And it kept popping up in my recommended feed. And I'm like, that sounds dumb. I'm not watching that nonsense. And then one day I just was like, fine. Okay, YouTube, I'll watch it. And then I was like, what the hell? This can't be real. I'd never heard of this before. I said to myself, fine, I'll go test it. And so I searched on Google remote viewing targets, actually landed on Daz's website, got a target, and I got a Post-it note. My first session, my ground zero, is a scribble on a Post-it note, because all I was trying to do really was fail so that I could feel smug about correctly guessing that it didn't work and understanding everything so well that I knew that this was impossible. Anyway, then it did work, and it was quite the shock. It's a few lines on a Post-it note, but the feedback was image was a painting, and the lines that I drew basically exactly overlaid the painting. The individual buildings, and there's some stairs, and there's a tower in the distance and stuff, and I drew it all, even the little clouds in the sky, and it just looked like scribbles to me on this Post-it note. So I'm like, yeah, 30 seconds. Open up the feedback and see this thing and go, look, how dumb is this? This must be, oh, shit. Wow, that's creepy. yeah, so then I did it. I just kept doing it because part of me was still believed it was impossible. Part of me was literally sitting there doing it. So there was this real conflict between like, this is impossible, but I'm doing it. And I just kept doing it until the this is impossible part of me died. But it took a long time, actually, even though I had some amazing hits and was naming the target and describing things super accurately and having these incredible experiences. And it was, looking back, it was like so obviously way beyond chance. There was just no way this was happening by chance. But it still took a while for me to be able to accept that it was real because it was such a departure from my previous worldview. I used to just be a nuts and bolts materialist, the standard Western upbringing. Now I'm really not. I don't know what's real.
David, as a question, I mean, my wife's known, what I'm like all my life because, I was into this before we even met because we got together at the age of 15. Your worldview's changed. How does that tie in with your, with your partner and your family life? Is she okay with it, or is she like, whoa, what's going on here?
Well, she like me, she thought I'd gone nuts because I thought I'd gone nuts. She's all right with it now. Like, not interested in it. It's not her thing, but it's just like, she can see I'm clearly doing what I should be doing, and it's right for me. So she's supportive in that way. Broader family and friends, I don't talk to it about, and it's not like I'm keeping it a secret. But if you talk to people about this, generally their reaction is to either feel really threatened and get angry, or be like, "You're crazy," because there must be some explanation for you making these impossible claims, and it's much easier to go, that person is crazy, than it is to go, maybe my ideas about reality are wrong and my entire worldview is incorrect. Nobody wants to do that, right? So they're like, you're crazy. That must be false. So I just don't bother. I'm very happy to spend time talking with people who come looking for this stuff and helping people and teaching people, but I'm not going out there trying to convert people. There's I think that's really counterproductive.
I feel like there's more people these days that are more open-minded about psychical functioning in general, though. It's not as hard line as it used to be. Even when I started, a little over 10 years ago, just the atmosphere of the receptibility that people have to this idea. Is it possible that your mind can do things beyond what you thought it could do? And I mean, part of this, I imagine, is probably because so many aspects of our reality, specifically in the UFO genre, have kind of come out in full swing, and everyone's just like, I don't know, is that a UFO? And they're talking about it in Congress. So I think what is real and what is not real is loosened a little bit, and they're more receptive to at least looking at the evidence. Which the evidence is there. It's just, it's not usually presented in a way that most people are willing to look at right now. So,
and all the pose going back, decades.
We're gonna need to get him a new cell plan or something, because
he's been abducted.
I really wanted to ask him, how this kind of issue is for him, because he's got the religious background.
He'll pop back on in a minute.
People with some quite strong beliefs. Well, hopefully,
when he pops back on in a minute, he'll be looking all dishevelled from being abducted and anally probed, maybe.
Oh wow! This is episode 1, and we're already into the anal probing.
But yeah, I agree with you guys on this, but I'm a bit different than David in that I've never given a care what people think. So people just ask me, when they do, I can see my partner's eyes roll. We'd be going to like a party, and someone would go, "Okay, well, what do you do for a living then?" And I'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm a consultant." And they go, "Oh, what do you consult?" And I was like, I go, "I'm an intuitive consultant." And then my wife's like, you can see her go, "Oh, here we go." And then you spend the next half hour trying to tell them what you do with their face like, and then they're like,
It is quite hard to communicate to people succinctly as well. Because it's people don't know what that job is.
What do you do? Well, I travel anywhere in time and space, and I can get any information I want.
Yes, he's back quick before he goes again.
He's looking happy.
So,
look at that smile.
Josh, I wanted to ask you about.
I believe I'm here.
You are here. Is there a spirit in the room with us now? Yeah, excellent. Yeah, okay. I wanted to ask you how the being public about your involvement with remote viewing and all the woo-woo is for you with where you live and like coming from a religious background. What's
Well,
that experience like for you?
it's gone in a really interesting way, to be honest. I kind of was trying to do the whole secret identity thing at first, something along the lines of like just occasionally hinting at it, like at first doing associative remote viewing targets. It would be like going, yeah, I'm part of this group of people, and we try to predict the outcome of sports games. And about a week or so into saying something like that, I was at lunch with some coworkers, and they're like, "What? So you're some kind of psychic?" And I was like, "Well, that's out of the bag. I'm just gonna roll with it." And after that, I've just decided to be completely open about what I do. And maybe it's just because it's a work setting and there's just a sort of expectation of, well, we're not going to be rude to him for doing something that we don't necessarily believe in. But I haven't gotten any kind of like hostile, like, you're some kind of crazy person. It's been generally pretty accepting. I don't really talk about it with my family. I'm not hiding it.
What about with family?
But it's still, I think it will be fine, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll burn that bridge when I come to it.
So you haven't told your family? You don't discuss it with your family?
My immediate family knows. My father knows. My mother is very deeply rooted in her faith. So I just, not to be like, because I want to, I don't think that she's going to judge me. I'm not worried about that. I just don't want her constantly being upset or worried that I'm going to go to hell or something because of the way I go about my own spirituality. So it's less out of like, oh, I can't tell mom. It's more, I don't want her to be existentially traumatized by that information.
Yeah, it's a common thing with the woo, isn't it? The subset of people who are just like, it's evil. Whatever it is, it's evil and it's demons and it's Satan and it's awful. And you can see that in the UFO field. But I think when the US military project, remote viewing project was running, there was people who wanted to shut it down because demons and Satan. And there's stories of that same kind of reaction relating to the UFO thing. Whether those are true or not, I mean, there's enough stories in that field.
It's strange in a way, though, isn't it? Because even most of the religious doctrines, the Bible and the other ones, they all have instances of prophets and prophetic visions within them, and they're accepted within within those doctrines, but they're not accepted kind of outside of those doctrines.
Yeah,
that is an
This is your
interesting
special topic here, isn't it? Biblical scholarship.
I definitely,
and woo-woo.
I've spent the first 20 years of my life really pouring into scripture, and the kind of church that my family would attend was all about speaking in tongues and spiritual healing, things like that. I guess one of the things you really have to understand coming from that worldview is they co-opt your intuition, and there's a very strict sort of I didn't have words for this at first, but then there's this podcast called Cults to Consciousness where they actually gave me some verbiage to understand it. They take your feelings and they teach you that what's normally a good feeling, etc., this feeling is from God. When you're having a good experience, like when you get together and you sing worship songs, that's the spirit entering the room. And when you feel bad feelings, that's from the devil. And they co-opt the whole spectrum of feelings, situation, and intuition, and they teach you to look at it from a binary of God, not of God. So when you look at, if someone from that worldview would be looking at a psychic or something like that, they're specifically practicing in a way that it's not from God because it's not going according to that individual's understanding of what their pastor's understanding of the scripture is. It's therefore of the devil.
Yep.
So
well, I know there's
sorry, go ahead, Brett.
Warnings in different religious texts, and from that perspective, so I mean, there's like the modern day kind of co-opting that you're describing, but there's also in the scriptures, different scriptures and different religions themselves say, don't do this because it's dangerous. And obviously they'll say because the devil, XYZ. And as someone who has explored a lot of these different avenues, to some extent, I understand why someone who maybe is not ready to have their head turned upside down, their world turned around, and it's like, what's real, what's not real. If they're not ready to handle that in as grounded as a way as they possibly can, it could be very upsetting to the individual. So I'm not sure exploring and using your psychical functioning is for everybody.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that isn't promoted enough is the discipline of just psychic protection. And it's making sure that you're okay, making sure that you're okay. Am I still on the ground? Like, you don't want to lose it. I actually have met individuals, I've even worked with individuals who were totally fine, did remote viewing, and they reached a point where they actually did crack, for lack of a better word, and where their reality was too impacted because they were spending too much time. Their day-to-day reality was heavily impacted because they were spending too much time doing remote viewing, doing out-of-body projection, astral projection, all these other things, that it actually disabled them a little bit in their day-to-day life. They didn't know how to balance that and ground themselves. And so there's a lot of RV courses out there. I mean, even, stuff that I've taught, which, I feel it's like the thing I'd like to see more and thing I want to do more is give people or enable people with those kind of tools so that they can operate in both worlds.
I think we should do a whole show on this, because
Sure.
psychic self-defense and everything, it's well and good.
It's hugely important.
But it ties into broader personal development and self-awareness and stuff, doesn't it? Which is big and important, and much more important for most people than remote viewing is. This is a real niche, hard thing that we do, but some of these related skills are useful for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I just want to add one more thing to your point, Brett, about the danger of this. Is it can be epistemically destabilizing, but some of the stuff that's out there in psychic space is kind of first order dangerous and deceptive. And I think as a golden rule, you shouldn't believe any of it, because it's when people start getting drawn into this thing that, in my experience, they get really in trouble, and they can end up basically having an experience that is indistinguishable from schizophrenia. The voices told me to, and it can be confusing because you can be
I know people who had that exact experience after doing remote viewing for years. The voices told me, and I was like, "Oh, brother,
why are you listening to random voices? Come on!"
It's
if some random person phoned you up, and you're like, "Who's this?" And they're like, "I'm an angel. Go and kill the queen. She's in the toaster." You would just put the phone down, right? Wouldn't you? You wouldn't take this seriously. But for whatever reason, huh?
I think we definitely need to do a program on this, guys, because something I've noticed and been made aware of, and in fact, I have a couple of polls running on Facebook groups about this very subject at the moment, is that I'm hearing a lot of background chatter about remote viewers that are having what we are now calling the hitchhiker effects. So they are having things follow them home, poltergeist in their house, all kinds of stuff which we didn't really hear of before. This kind of stuff didn't really happen to remote viewers. The psychic defense
not true. It happens to Brett constantly. His house is full of poltergeists. It's the most haunted place in Arizona.
Not. I've handled that, thankfully. Yeah, but no, you're right. When I was learning this, no one talked about this type of stuff. It wasn't part of the training. Other people I was working with weren't having any experiences. For some reason, I mean, when I was starting to really take it to the next level beyond just basic beginner level, I did start experiencing a lot of strange things in my life. A lot of strange things where I had full-on visual phenomenon flying through my apartment. Or, I was staying in a house, there'd be a ball of white light flying through the room, and I saw it with my waking eyes. Other people would see it. There's lots of, and that's just like a visual phenomenon. There's other things, that we're ready to deep dive on this that we could talk about that are even more kind of strange and weird and unnerving. But it's a multi-variable thing, because it's like the strange stuff that happens, how do you handle it and stay grounded? And then at the same time, how do you then still operate in your day-to-day life without it affecting that negatively? Because it's like it's like a thin line to like pass through, and it's easy to fall off on either side of that path, I feel like. And I've known, and it's unfortunate, I've known a lot of people that have. And so it's almost like responsibility in psychical functioning. Just the more that's stressed and the more tools and stuff that's available for people for that, I feel is better. And I think in the olden age, so to speak, when it was just meditation, it kind of was built in a little bit to that, because it wasn't about going and exploring the universe and astral projecting. I mean, that would happen eventually if you did a lot of meditation. But some of the like earliest meditations over in Asia, I mean, those techniques, the Hindus and the Buddhists, it would be sitting, trying to just still your mind. And then one level advanced to that would be, okay, bring in a difficult emotion and just hold the emotion. I mean, that's like the level. And then they did that for 40 years. And then suddenly they realized, holy smokes, I can move my perception somewhere else. And it was stable, and they could see things, and they could pick up on information. So that's lost a little bit in the modern instant gratification culture.
As you guys know, in my classical training, a lot of all my early work for probably the first 4 years was what they call personal development. So it was a lot of meditation, talking to your inner self, get to know yourself. The guides or the people that were close to you. You did that for years before you ever went out looking at anything else in the universe. And I think with people jumping in the remote viewing, because it's so accessible now, a lot of that is lost in the process.
Yeah, I had to do that after. So I started the remote viewing. I had all these crazy things, poltergeist type activity. There's just so much strange shit started happening in my life. And as a result of that, I was like, I need to solve this somehow, because it's very unnerving. Then I went into the personal development. Then I need to figure out how to get my mindset correct. I need to figure out what's my unconscious mind doing? What are my habits? What are my deep-seated beliefs? How do I heal some of the things from earlier in my life? And all these other things. Well, who are my guides? Do I have any? And
the shadow work is no joke. It's important. Nobody wants to do the boring work, do they? Everybody wants to go for the fireworks and the fun stuff.
Too.
It's hard, and I don't want to do it. And nobody wants to do it, but it's so important if you're not going to go nuts, isn't it? And it's not like this is just if you want to explore intuitive psychic phenomena. This will just make your life better. 10 to 10x how nice your life is to deal with this stuff. Like, everybody should do it, even if they're never going to approach this stuff. I think one issue, particularly with remote viewing and weird negative effects on viewers, is its legacy, its military legacy, being that it had to be framed as science, right? Because they had to get their funding renewed. Can you imagine going into a room full of generals once a year and being like, okay, so the psychic spies with their Scientology training have been, they had to be like, oh no, we're doing science here. There's no, like, psychic was a dirty word, right? And they made up all this technical jargon and made everything really technical and nerdy. And because they definitely weren't doing mysticism, and they weren't psychics, and this wasn't magic, it was science, because the Matrix or something, right? All of that stuff got thrown out because that was the only way that I think that they could pursue that project, right? And then we've inherited the legacy of that program, and it's just not in the culture. And I think it's coming back into the culture, and I hope we can do something to get it back in there. Josh, did you ever get haunted? Because I never got haunted, and I'm kind of jealous. I never saw a UFO. I never got a poltergeist.
As a child?
I never had any fireworks.
Or in general?
Oh, no, ever. Like, has anything materially shown up?
Oh, no, I've seen a picture.
I'm not talking about the metaphysical stuff.
No,
that's one thing.
To answer you a bit more seriously.
Please edit that out.
Was that a paranormal phenomenon?
Felt like it. In my teenage years, I was fancying myself as like starting to become some sort of exorcist. And I would have these experiences where shadow people would like creep across my vision in my room, and I would feel like that tightness in the air. I'd get a little bit of a chill, and that would be addressed by fervently reciting different prayers and praises. And it wasn't like some specific, here's a passage of the Bible for exorcism. It was like just excerpts from Psalms and Proverbs. Yeah. And eventually they would just go away. I also cultivated this really firm belief of no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And as a result, I had a friend who claimed to see auras and things like that, and claimed he could attack people's auras. He remarked to me one day that he's like, yeah, I keep on just trying to poke you with like whatever thing he did. And it was just impossible. Like I'd watch it bounce off you. And being super religious, I was like, yeah, that's the God in me. That's the Jesus.
Yeah. What would you say it is now?
Well, it's arguably still the same thing, depending on how you interpret it. That was honestly like my moment of clarity when I started experimenting in other forms of spirituality that were considered taboo, even though Christians all have their own different version of it. It felt exactly the same. There wasn't that feeling that I had been trained to feel of this is of the devil. It was exactly the same. And that was when it clicked and everything came together. So in the RV world, I only have a couple years experience, but in terms of just the raw using the force, if you will, I have a whole lifetime of this is what I was raised in. I'm just using it in a new context, and it feels very freeing for it to be under my own power rather than having to throw everything onto a higher power.
Yeah, I think the closest I've come to anything showing up in my life before I got into this stuff, when I was young, one of my grandparents died. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember lying in bed at night having this really strong feeling of a presence in the room and that it was them. But it freaked me out so much that I asked them, like, can you just go away? Because you're freaking me out. This is really scary. And I think I can pinpoint that as the moment that I kind of shut this stuff down in my life and started to write it off and go, well, that was just, a phenomenon of grief or whatever. And it was all generated inside the brain. And now I look back at that. As a very young child, I had a couple of small out-of-body experiences where I was floating up to the ceiling, and then I'd kind of notice and go, what the hell? And just pop back into my body. And that happened a couple of times. And I wanted to reproduce it. I couldn't reproduce it. I had that visitation thing. And then that was it. Like I shut it down before the age of 10, probably. And then was in my early 30s before I opened that book up again.
Josh, and also David, your descriptions of your childhood experiences reminded me of one of my own, where this is way before, obviously, I got into remote viewing. But I was growing up, we were Baptists, and every Sunday after church, my parents would invite a bunch of people over, and we'd do these group prayers. So there'd be like 3 families there with their kids and their parents, and so everyone would close their eyes, and it'd be like a group prayer or like a group, like, I don't know, obviously as a kid, I was just bored, and I was like, oh, are we done yet? Are we done yet? But at one of these, I just closed my eyes, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna let whatever happens. And I haven't had experience like this again since then. But what happened is after about 5 minutes of the prayer stuff going on, I started actually seeing, when you close your eyes, it's usually just black. Most people see black. Now, there's a lot of things you can do with that as far as even just psychical work is concerned. But on that inner screen, very vividly, almost as clear as seeing with my regular eyes, I started seeing geometrical patterns show up that were green, and they started spinning and like changing in a whole bunch of different ways. And it was the only time in a religious experience where something really strange occurred within my own consciousness, because I was perceiving something. I didn't know what it was, but something was like opening and then showing me really, really intricate patterns of it. Almost, if you're familiar with what greeble is, it's kind of an obscure term, but it's just like lots of little details, geometric details, all kind of packed into itself. is what I started to see
Were you
really vividly.
falling asleep due to boredom at this point? Because I know,
No, I was very
hypnagogic
awake.
hallucinations are kind of often geometric things, and I often have the geometric kind of tunnel zoomy experiences. Like if I'm trying to get into a trance to do ERV, or when I'm falling asleep or something, I'll see that's like a layer that I go through, and there doesn't seem to be much information in it. It's like a screensaver almost. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about as far as the hypnagogic state stuff. And no, it wasn't that at all. It's just something else. During that experience, I opened my eyes. I was like, what's going on? Close my eyes again. It would still be there. Open my eyes. And I was like, what is this weird thing that's like showing up in my mind? It was really, really
It's
fascinating.
Triangle Jesus.
Yeah, Triangle Jesus was showing showing up.
I have to be honest, guys, my experience growing up isn't that too dissimilar from all yours, really, because although mine came from a spiritualist influence, from the age of 10 onwards, I was like at the spiritualist church singing in the choir and stuff. They were still religious in that, they followed the Bible to a degree, they believed in God, they believed in Jesus, they believed in prayer, they sang hymns, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They just had the added kind of philosophies that they believed in a life after death. They believed you could communicate with dead people, and that's what they did. On a Sunday night, I used to be there on a Sunday night, and there used to be the mediums at the front, and they had this kind of reverence around them. You looked at them. Well, I did when I was 10 years old. I looked at them and thought, wow, how do these people do this? And then they would you'd see them talk to dead people and give messages to people in the congregation that were so appealing to those people and so comforting that you would see them pretty much on every occasion, go away crying and upset, but also happier and at more of a sense of peace in some way. And I always thought that was something special when I saw that happen, even at the age of 10, but there was still a deeply religious component to it in some degree.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I definitely had a lot of that growing up. And then I turned away from it totally in my early 20s when I went to college. And then it refound me, essentially. Not necessarily the religious aspect, but just the
spiritual aspect.
That I'm spiritual aspect. Yeah, it's the idea of that I'm more than my physical self. That's what Robert Monroe.
I don't class myself as religious
really
in any
canonized.
way, but I do think that I found spirituality through remote viewing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I find RV a useful kind of spiritual tool and a useful discipline. And when I was first starting out, I didn't have any kind of spiritual practice. I wasn't meditating, do anything. Started doing remote viewing and kind of was like, oh, wow, there's this whole space I haven't explored. And then that kind of kicked me onto the spiritual path. At the beginning, because I had this lingering materialism and poo-pooing of all this hand-wavy, unverifiable woo-woo stuff. It was really helpful for me to be able to go pick up blind remote viewing target and prove to myself that there's a real effect here. That even if I'm wrong in what I'm doing right now, I can go, look, I can perceive things and there's no rational material explanation for how this works. So there is something here. It is okay for me to be spending time investigating this because obviously, but I had to kind of remind myself of that. So remote viewing was a really cool way to do that.
What was I'm curious to hear everyone's first real world feedback. Something that's, because when people hear about remote viewing and say, oh, you're describing pictures, and I'm guessing a skeptic would say, well, you're just forcing it to match and it doesn't match. It's like, oh, you're saying it's close, but you can't do that when you have something that is accurate, whether it's precognitive about the future or whether it's something that there's no way you could have known and it ended up being true for someone else or even for your own self later in your life. I wondered, have you guys had something like that where it was like this shell shock moment for you?
Yeah.
That you're like, there's no way for me to disprove it. Like I cannot even disprove this because it's so significant what just occurred. You're shaking your head, Daz. You sound like you got one.
Well, I mean, for me, it was partly a death of 1,000 tiny cuts, but I had what in the jargon we'd call a bilocation experience pretty early on. And the target was like a abandoned Buddhist temple monastery complex in the jungle. And I don't know how, what happened to induce this. It doesn't usually happen. But for people who don't know, remote viewing is a boring process to watch and to do. You're sitting there with a piece of paper, getting little tiny bits of information and trying to put them together. And you start with, what color is it? Is it moving around? What's its texture? Is it hot or cold? And really basic stuff. And you kind of build throughout the session until you can put together a detailed picture. And it's a great system and it works well, but it doesn't make good TV. And there are other modalities of psychic perception, which is much more like what you might imagine remote viewing to be, where you just see it, where you're just there, you can identify what you're looking at, it's totally unambiguous. And this just happened to me suddenly. And I closed my eyes and it was just like, bloop, it was teleported, if you like, into this space where I could see this big stone table, somebody wearing a robe and turning the pages of this huge old book, like from when books were handwritten and handmade and everything, like this giant, and reverently turning pages in it. And this was a couple of seconds, and then like I was back and continuing to write on paper, going, whoa, wow. And I still remember that experience today, and this was years ago. That really made an impact on me. And part of my session notes was temple in the jungle. And then I opened my feedback. It's a temple in the jungle. I looked up more detail, and it had 2 libraries in it, and it was all stone built. So yeah,
so you bilocated there.
Yeah,
essentially is what happened. Yeah.
That was pretty uncontroversial to me. And it's not like any of my other targets were temples in the jungle, or I was doing a remote viewing target could be anything. And when you're doing it, you don't know what it is. We say you're blind to the target. I just had a bunch of random numbers. And I think because that was such a vibrant experience is why it had such an impact on me. Because data-wise, yeah, you could prove it just by looking at the amount of stuff I got right. Even if it's stuff like your target is a building and you're describing angular, chunky, man-made, inanimate stuff, and people go, well, that's not good enough. That, it could be anything. It could be a car or a paperweight, or, you're just fitting data. But actually think it could be the ocean, it could be animals, it could be all sorts of different stuff that is not like that. And I think we're inclined to, when we see data that doesn't name the target and isn't as impressive as we wished remote viewing would be all the time, to then fixate on those data and go, well, it could have been anything. And actually, not only could it, probably not, but when you do 50 or 100 of those, and usually you're in the right ballpark, you don't have to be 100% right. You can be 50% right 100 times, or 25% right 100 times, and you're still outperforming chance significantly. So that's the boring way to prove it to yourself, right? The fun way is with bilocating to
a shell shock.
Libraries.
It's that shell shock experience.
That was very
I find
cool.
those shell shock ones are the ones that stick with you, though, just like your experience, that probably stuck with you. That bilocation, you can remember it vividly to this day. Like that event happened. Yeah. What's yours, Daz?
Yeah, I have
curious.
a really strong one, and it's probably quite a few years in, I would say. It was when I was working for the Find Me group, so that was in the 2000s. So I'd probably been RVing for about 10 years or more. And we were working a case, and it was a missing young lady in America. She'd been taken into a police station on some kind of she was a young black woman that had been taken into a police station on some kind of bogus charge and then released. And she just released on her own cognizance. And then she just completely disappeared. So we were called in to do the RV on that, and I had all this data saying, she's dead. She's in a ravine, in a quarry, kind of, up in the hills, all this kind of stuff, data. And a few weeks went by, and then I had a call from Kelly Snyder, the handler. He's an ex-DEA agent. He works with law enforcement. He's like, oh yeah, with and he called me. He said the FBI, they got a lead. She's in Las Vegas, and they're going over there now to have a look at her. And I was on the phone to him going, no, tell them not to bother her. She's not in Las Vegas. She's in the hills above the police station. He's like, no, they're following the lead. It's a proper lead. Anyway, we came off the call. I didn't hear from him again for a couple of weeks. And then a couple of weeks later, I heard that 2 hikers were out one day and they found her body in a ravine in the hills above the police station, exactly where I said her body was.
Wow.
So that was the one that hit me and proved it for me. It was like, whoa, this really does work. And even the people with all the resources, like the FBI working on tips, were going in completely the wrong direction, using huge amounts of resources. And I was right on that one occasion. So yeah, that hit it home for me. I think that was like, holy shit, this really does work, and it could be really beneficial for people.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have a standout holy shit early experience with RV or other woo-woo stuff for that matter?
Well, this one isn't particularly RV. This is another teen years one that wasn't specifically religious oriented. In my first relationship, I started having these experiences where I would be laying in my bed and I could feel like I would feel the physical sensation of holding my girlfriend's hand. And it was just like, it would happen at weird times. And I would ask her like, hey, are you feeling something like your hands being held, etc.? And she would agree. And there would be things like that. And then there'd be times where I'd just get this sensation of my friend is not feeling very good. I should reach out to them and I'd ask them how they're feeling. And I would nail that particular perception. And even years later, I'd follow up and like, hey, I just want to make sure, like, remember that time we were in a relationship? I could like feel your hand. You said you'd feel it too. Was that actually a thing, or were you just like saying that to humor me? And she's like, oh, no, that was an actual experience I had. That's some of the closest.
I thought that story was going to get R-rated for a minute there.
You wish.
I think
I'm saving those for the next episode.
that kind of
Cool.
that kind of experience, Josh, I think is experienced by a lot more people than let on, where someone just knows. They don't know why they know, but they know someone that they're close with, something is either wrong or they need to reach out, and then they pick up the phone and call them and they find out some shit just dropped and they do need help or they do need someone to talk to, and you did call at just the right time. And so there was some part of your intuition that was reaching out and giving you that knowing. And I feel like that's a really common experience.
That's, you know, where that's the most common is parents, particularly mothers and their children. If the kids halfway around the world and they get in trouble or they're sick, it's so common for mum to just suddenly know and be like, oh shit, my baby's in trouble.
There was
gotta give him a call.
They do share the same DNA though, don't they? So
yeah,
that's possible.
There was one time, David, I was actually trying to reach out to you for help on this particular occasion. I'm trying to be vague as possible just because this one is a bit more of a...
All right, I'll try and work out what you're talking about.
So one of my wife's loved ones was going through a bit of a crisis, and we were very worried that they were going to do something that would harm themselves, etc. And my wife turns to me and is like, if any of this stuff you're doing is real, go for it now. Like, do it now. And I went into this session where I tried to link with that person's emotional state and just send them thoughts like, you need to call my wife's name. Call my wife's name. I would get all this resistance, like, no, I can't, etc. And I sat there for about 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden, all those intense emotions I was feeling from that person, that was just suddenly cut off. And I was so deeply disturbed that something had happened to that person in question. And I reached out to you, you were already asleep at the time just because of the time zones. And right as I felt that disconnect and I started messaging you, my wife messaged me back saying that person had given her a call. And I was like, man, I have this nailed. I have the exact timestamps. I can prove this. I have receipts. And then Facebook Messenger and Discord screwed me over because obviously at first when you have messages during the day, it's like message at hour or whatever. And then it just turns to day a few weeks ago, a few months ago. I was like, no. That was...
Well, I mean, the real value isn't in proving it to someone else. I think I would imagine the value is that you know that happened. Someone can't take that away from you. That was your experience. You know what happened, and you used it in a way to help someone, which is a great thing. I think that's a
with the
positive
best
thing
evidence in the world, people will still reject it and go, well, what you're saying is impossible. So there must be a problem with the evidence. You know, there's a lot of people at the minute talking about using blockchain to prove the remote viewing works. And I guarantee you what will happen is that they'll put this vast effort into the blockchain notarization of blinding and blah, blah, blah. And then they'll present the evidence and people will go, holy shit, they've hacked blockchain. Blockchain doesn't work. You know,
You're
there must
totally
be
right.
something, right? So I don't waste my time on that kind of prove it stuff. If anybody wants to prove or disprove this themselves, just try it, because your own direct personal experience is the only thing that's going to be powerful enough to shake up your worldview if it's entrenched against these sorts of ideas. Although why you've just listened to an hour-long podcast about it, if you don't believe in it, I don't know, but
They're gonna listen to it and then go look at that bit of us trying to do the elephant and go, there we go, that's proof.
yeah, I knew it was fake. Well, no, the reason we put that in is just to get rid of the skeptics. You know, this is a cozy fireside chat.
There's something to be said.
Everybody who wants to rage quit can do it early.
Yeah,
and then all the juicy stuff is here for the dedicated people.
There's something to be said. I was going through this book, and right now the author's name is slipping my head. I would go check, but I feel like I would probably close out the thing again. We don't need that. It's a book called Naked Statistics, and it's just, I've been going through a couple different books. I'm trying to work on my math. That's neither here nor there. But one of the things he talks about is with statistical models, there's a very important distinction between the idea of accuracy and precision. And his example refers to like the 2008 market crash. Prior to 2008, all the different firms that were investing were using this model for assessing their risks, and it was extremely precise. It went down to however many decimal points, etc., but it ended up failing to predict the crash. And since then, they realized that sometimes when you focus too much on things being exactly precise, you miss out on a lot of different trends. And I feel like a lot of the time when people are getting into remote viewing or criticizing it, the criticism is, well, you didn't perfectly draw the exact same thing, even though all of your data clearly aligns with the target. It's just chance. And it's a difference of they wanted something that was too precise versus we gave them something that wasn't necessarily precise, but it was accurate. And I feel like the real key to success in that field is knowing how to balance the two.
I think I don't think I mean this may be a bullheaded or strong approach perhaps, but I gave up caring a long time ago whether people think this is real. And it is so liberating. I used to be like, oh, I need to make sure I have the perfect presentation. It needs to be like, there were just the right words all the time, and not say that it was so liberating when I just stopped caring. And one of the things that if someone doesn't believe in psychical functioning whatsoever, I'm happy for them. Like, that's totally okay. And for some people, maybe it's too far. It's not on their journey in this life to even explore that. But other people not understanding or believing this is real really doesn't affect me at all. And I'm still able to pursue the things that I'm passionate about. I'm still able to apply it in areas that I think are interesting and fun, and also help people in ways that I'm able to do so. And I've just had too many. It becomes like a path that you kind of take. And, everyone else kind of be damned. It's fine. It's kind of my approach. Yeah. I really don't. It doesn't bother me. So.
I find myself, sometimes it feels a bit alienating would be the wrong word, because that has negative connotations. But I just feel like I'm living in a very different world to a lot of people. My day-to-day experience now includes things like precognition is just like normal. The other day, I had a dream where I went into the bathroom, turned the tap on, and no water came out. And then a couple hours later, my wife woke me up with a coffee and said, oh, there's no water. There's been a break in the water main, so we got no water, but there was enough for this coffee. And it's just like, dream in the future, no problem. Yeah. That's totally mundane to me now. And, you can forget how different your experience becomes from a normal experience when you do this stuff day in, day out. But it's great. I mean, I love it, but it's a strange place to be, isn't it? I never thought I'd end up here.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be like an engineering manager or something at this point in my life. And I'm really glad I'm not. This is much more exciting.
I guess sometimes we forget, because all of us are doing this quite regular now. And I'm definitely doing it very regular, for 3 to 5 times a week, full time. It's very easy to forget how amazing and different the world we are living in is. Because, you know, I'm just sat here now working from home, doing RV full time, working when I want kind of thing. And literally my entire job is sat at a desk with my tablet in my fake pen, you know, doing an RV for an hour and traveling got to God knows where in the universe, and then sending that off to our project manager. You know, it's a completely different reality than everyone else that I know, you know, other than you guys and my remote viewing colleagues and friends. It's such a different reality than what everyone else is living with their 9-to-5 jobs, working in offices, doing all kinds of boring day-to-day things. You know, I have to sit there thinking about, am I really going to have this conversation with this entity from the, you know, the middle reaches of the universe? And they're at work thinking, am I really going to have this conversation with someone over how many, you know, post-it notes we have to buy over the next week? I do really obviously think, you know, sometimes I catch myself every now and again. I think to myself, you don't realize how lucky you are being able to do the kind of things you're doing and living in the reality you are, because there are lots of people out there that don't get to understand, you know, our places in the universe and what we're doing and all these unique gifts.
Oh, I'm glad you understand it, mate. I'm still definitely working on that.
No.
I think that really resonates with me when you say that. When you say you don't realize how lucky you are, because it doesn't mean that I know everything there is to know. Like, I would never advocate, I'm sure you wouldn't either. But I know a whole lot more than I did before I started. And just the nature of reality, what's going on here, who am I, what is this experience, just like the big questions. And these are big questions that I had before I got into this, but I was looking, it's almost humorous to me now, because I was looking in totally the wrong area, looking in a materialistic, like totally science-driven narrative of objective reality, trying to find an answer, and nothing made sense. And
that was actually what led me here. Was you know, I was a very rational person, and I was trying to work out various things about geopolitics and investment and just normal mundane things, thinking about, you know, I had my first child had been born, and so I was starting to think a bit more long term, and it hit me one night that I actually understood nothing about the world. Like, all the models I had, I realized they don't work. They can't make predictions. They can't tell me anything useful about what is going on or what will happen. This is just bullshit. It's completely useless. And that was the tipping point where I realized, like, I don't understand the world. I've missed something huge, and now I need to go find out what it was. Some months of nonsense later was when I stumbled on that Russell Targ video and was like, oh, it's the nature of consciousness. That's what
Russell Targ video.
Definitely banned. I bet it's got 3 times as many hits as it would have if they didn't say it was banned, though, right?
But
it's doing.
That's what we're discussing. Where, you know, and I said I forget how lucky we are, and we are lucky because there are billions of people out there that don't get to understand themselves on the level that we are. You know, and I've said this before. I think RV and anything psychic is more about learning about me and how I fit in everything than it is anything else. And there are millions or billions of people that don't get these experiences. They don't get these life lessons that we're able to experience.
Yeah. Well, we've all been born very privileged in privileged societies where we're actually, these opportunities are available to us. I mean, if we were, food wasn't available, shelter, all that type of stuff, you know, we're living in, wild animals are killing people, disease, you know, we are very fortunate from that. And so it's like, if you don't have those things, good luck trying to do spiritual pursuits. Way more difficult in that type of environment. And so we're very fortunate for that. Definitely. I feel very fortunate. And I mean, if you really, I mean, there's I can't remember his name, but he's well, it doesn't matter who he is, but it was this, he said something that really resonated with me. He's some speaker on crypto and world economics and stuff like that. But he's really big on meditation, and he wanted to bring meditation to a larger group of people. But what he realized is that, you know what, yes, that would help people, but what people need more first is sustainable living first. And like, there's so many people who don't even have a house, or, don't even have basic necessities met. Almost like that's what needs to be addressed first for the larger
this is
humanity.
like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it? You need to be safe and fed and warm before you've got time for meditation.
So that would be, I haven't thought about this, but maybe sometime in the future, that's something that the remote viewing community could figure out a positive way. It's like, how could we use these skills in a way that actually does benefit or give back to society or helps uplift society in some way? I think the tools for teaching and making those available for free, there's a lot of it. I know everyone here has done things to assist with that. So that's really good. But I wonder what that might look like to be some sort of a giving back, trying to help humanity. I'm not sure what that would look like, but it would be interesting to kind of suss out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm involved in a project at the minute that is trying to do something in that direction, because we're looking at problems the world is facing in the next 10, 50 years, like the near time frame, more like the 10-year than the 50-year stuff. But we're looking at issues like, how do we clean up the Pacific garbage patch, or how do we capture polluting gases from industry? How do we clean up space junk? And they're like generally technological problems, but they're the next problems. They're not like, oh, we'll go into the future and everybody will have a jetpack and a fusion reactor, and it's like, yeah, but we got no way to get there, have we? It's like, what can we build with what we have now? Or like, what we just need to invent one more thing. We're only one step away from this. So our aim is to do a bunch of that. So far, the data's been really good. Hopefully we can publish it and get it out there, and then find some open-minded people somewhere who are willing to take this seriously enough to look at our data, because we've got
open-minded philanthropist. That's what you need to find.
Think tanks or consultancies or whatever.
Sure.
I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
Totally.
Because the data we've been getting is good quality and it's very specific. So I think if you could get this in front of engineers or scientists or policymakers working on this, they could look at our ideas and go, oh, hey, that is a good idea. And then they'll think about it and go, we could do that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't take much. It's just getting eyeballs on it. Anyway,
Sure.
I'll tell you the secrets of how to clean up space junk next week.
Get out there, make a video, put it online, maybe open source it kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think we will. It's just time, isn't it? It's a lot of work.
It's hard getting everything done. Not enough time.
We just have to learn to slow time down for ourselves. I haven't learned that trick yet. Or you can just make...
We haven't learned that Jedi
time only
skill
goes
yet.
faster
It's
for
like,
some reason.
slow down time.
Yeah. Speaking of time, we've been going for an hour and 20.
Excellent.
I think time
Indeed.
might be slowing down for some listeners at this point. So does anybody have anything they want to say to wrap up?
I think this will be a fun chat in the future. Just the psychic guys shooting the breeze, kind of what's on our minds. I think that's what the future of this is going to be. It's just, what are we working on? Maybe once in a, I don't know if we're going to do it every week, but I floated the idea, I guess, of maybe passing around like a baton of, hey, if you guys want to look at something this week in advance and then talk about an interesting subject, might be kind of fun to do.
Suggestions.
I think
if anyone listening has any suggestions that of topics or things they want to talk about.
Yeah, suggestions would be great. And I think, do you guys want to be discussing? I'm totally down to discuss the more woo-woo end of things.
I would love
I
that.
think a lot of people really want to hear about that.
Nothing's off topic with me. Anything goes.
Yeah. Cool.
So that means in the future, we're
because we're not weird already.
Aliens, UFOs, what are they?
Oh,
everyone loves that topic.
I have a rant about that topic.
Do you? Oh, save it for next time. But
I don't have a rant.
Yeah, so I think it'll be fun.
Pantheons and deities as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Do a bit of comparative theology and mysticism stuff.
The trickster effect as well. I'd like to chat about that at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is everywhere in RV. Well, it's everywhere in all psychic stuff, but
I got one or two special guests that I'd love to have on to talk about how you experiences teaching Psi and like how we learn to do it, because I think a lot of people, especially if they're starting out on this journey, probably like to hear a sort of broad range of perspectives on that. And another one, hear me out here, but this is a question that people ask regularly, and it's about drugs and supplements and medications, and like, if I take loads of magic mushrooms, will it make me a better remote viewer? And it's like, well, no, because you'll be tripping balls, right? But it's an interesting topic. And the answer, guys, is generally no, don't start going and taking loads of drugs. But there's some interesting stuff in there, and about like supplements and non-psychoactive things that might help or hinder. And at some point, I would love to do a Ouija board as well. I don't know how we're going to do that remote, but
that'd be fun.
I want to find a way.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking last night you could make an iPad app with a Ouija board, and then it shares the thing between everybody's iPad, so you can see all the things moving around.
Yeah, we could do a share screen of someone with a Ouija board.
Virtual Ouija board app.
Yeah. I haven't done that for years. Anything like
Bring
that.
back crystals.
Yeah. Or we can do crystals and channeling Thoth again.
Yeah, we could all show our crystal collection. Have you guys got a crystal collection?
Not really a collection. I got a few crystals.
Not rang me. The one closest I have is this one. Well, it's not really a crystal, but it's a part of a meteor that I've had for 25 years.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, cool.
I have the more extensive part of my collection is black tourmaline, which is around the apartment for psychical protection, which it actually, I thought it was a bunch of bunk, but when I started using them, it actually worked. I was like, I'm little did I know.
Was that before or after
I have other
conversation?
Oh, this is way before.
Before, yeah.
I have a lot of these.
I thought it was junk.
Not
it's all orgone pyramid, Sully.
Well, it's, I mean, all what you want, but it's black tourmaline. Black tourmaline is in here with quartz and copper. I mean, that's all it is. So people read into it, I think, make it a little bit more mystical than it actually is. But I'm interested in the actual
totally made up, but it does work.
Impact.
I have to very begrudgingly admit that the black tourmaline is good to have around the house for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Sweet.
So I think it'll be fun to see where this podcast takes us. I'm sure we'll have lots of interesting discussions in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to close out, I have a unique gimmick. As I have this little bell to ring at the end. So I'm going to ring that bye-bye bell. All right. See you all next week or the week after.
Take care, guys. Big chat.
Toodles.
See you on the next show.
Take care, guys.